staff and the members of the public to our July 23rd, 2025 Administrative and Regulatory Committee meeting. My name is Linda Kroom, and I'm chair of the Administrative and Regulatory Committee. Joining me on my committee are committee members. Commissioner Paul Welch is on my left, and Commissioner Izola Shaw is on my right. The first item on today's agenda is the approval of minutes from the June 17th, 2025 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'd like to make the motion, but I'd like to ask the Secretary Treasurer if she can change a typo in paragraph 3 that says UD established Inspire, and we probably want to add an H to that. And then otherwise, I move to approve the minutes with that amendment.
Second.
It's been moved in second with the changes. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. These minutes are approved. We will now move to our next item on the agenda, propose amendments to bylaws. I would like to introduce President Andrews to provide an overview of this item.
Thank you, Commissioners, Madam Chair, members of the committee, the HOC team, and the public. Commissioners, as you know, it is best practice to review and update bylaws on an ongoing basis as there's changes in laws and regulations and even circumstances. This would be the first time the Commission would be updating its bylaws post-COVID. And so as you can imagine, in a virtual hybrid world, some things have shifted. The Commission did request that we staff take a look at the bylaws and present proposed changes, and the General Counsel has led in this effort. I'm pleased to turn it over to our General Counsel, Asha Memon, to provide you with a high-level overview of the proposed changes.
Thank you, Chelsea. Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Asha Memon, Senior Vice President of Legal Affairs. So like Chelsea said, today I'm going to go over the proposed amendments to the bylaws. We can go ahead and skip right to slide 3. Great. So the Office of General Counsel completed a comprehensive review of HOC's bylaws. The updates ensure that HOC is conforming to applicable laws and aligning with best practices. One second. Better? Okay. All right. So as I was saying, the updates ensure that HOC is conforming to applicable laws and aligning with best practices. They also modernize how the Commission functions and clarifies how the Commission operates. Some of the updates are slight modifications, while others are entire rewrites or new additions. I'm going to go through each article and explain the updates and provide a little bit more context for the changes. And I'm going to pause at the end of each article for questions. You should also have copies of the bylaws in front of you so that you can follow along. So we can go to the next slide. So the first article is just a general overview of the Commission itself. We added new sections for powers, purpose, committees, and the fiscal year. Powers explain the Commission's authority, which is specified in the Maryland Code. Purpose explains HOC's mission, which is based on HOC's strategic plan. Committees explain how HOC can establish new committees. And then we clarify that the fiscal year for the agency begins on July 1. Are there any questions on this initial article? All right, next slide. The second article.
Actually, I apologize, Asha. I'm looking at the current red line. It does have the our current address here in Kensington. My assumption is that we'd also be seeking support when going to final to make modifications to wherever our headquarters is.
Yeah, we'll do a quick update then. I think it says currently. I added that just to make sure it is the current address, but yes.
Thank you.
The second, so we're on the second article, and this is a basic overview of the commissioners themselves. This is an entirely new article. It explains how commissioners are appointed, their term, how they can resign, their compensation, how they can be removed, and clarifies that they are subject to the Montgomery County Public Ethics Law. Are there any questions about this article? Okay, next slide, please. The third article concerns the officers. There's one modification and 3 new sections in this article. The modification is in section 5, which discusses the role of the secretary treasurer. We clarified that the secretary treasurer's duties, and we clarified what the secretary treasurer's duties are, and that the president fills this role as part of their duties. The first new addition is in section 9, which is the removal of officers. This section provides a mechanism for commissioners to remove an officer for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or misconduct. To remove an officer, the commission has to convene a meeting to vote on the removal. The affected officer has at least to be provided at least 5 days advance notice of the meeting. And then the removal has to be done by a supermajority vote. The supermajority vote is shown on the slide, but as way of an example, if you had 7 commissioners at that meeting, you would need 5 votes to approve the removal. Next slide. The second addition is really just a clarification. We added section 10, which is additional personnel, president/executive director. And this section simply clarifies the president's duties. And then the final addition to this article is section 12, emergency authorization. This section gives the chair the authority to suspend the bylaws and adopt emergency guidelines to enable the commission to conduct essential business in event of a major emergency. Are there any questions about the officers article?
Yeah, I had a couple. The first one was that we define the CEO as the secretary treasurer, which makes her an officer of the board. Do we need to also say in that second that she's a non-voting member, or?
So what it says is that the secretary treasurer is an officer of the board, but this president fulfills those duties as part of her job role. So it is a separate position, but whomever is in the president's role would just be fulfilling those duties. And it's never been a voting member because I mean, we can add language if you.
I'm being, was reading it too closely maybe, but that would have made sense to me to say that this does not.
This is the time for
she's
this.
She's not a
Yeah,
member
sure.
of the board, but she serves in this role for the board.
I certainly don't have issues with making that clarification. That's the kind of thing that we would add, so I can do that.
Thank you. And then in section 9, for removal of officers, I, for some reason, came in, I thought we had an attendance rule. And should that have been here in the bylaws, or is that just by practice?
So the attendance rule is actually part of the BCC, which is the boards, commissions, and committees group of the county. And although HOC is listed as a BCC, not all of those rules apply to the agency, and the attendance rule is not something that's strictly applied to HOC. So we wouldn't add that in our bylaws.
Okay, and therefore we haven't really enforced an attendance.
We have not, no.
Right. If someone were not showing up all the time, it's the neglect of duty.
That's where I would look for that, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, can we go to the next slide? All right, the Article 4 deals with meetings. This first slide describes some modifications to the article. For annual meetings, we added that the chair can change the date of the annual meeting after giving 2 days prior written notice to commissioners. We also removed the requirement that 4 commissioners must be physically present for an annual meeting. For regular meetings, we added that the chair or president can forego a monthly meeting after giving the commissioners 24 hours prior notice. For special meetings, we removed the ratification requirement. We also removed the ratification requirement from emergency meetings, as well as removed the requirement that 4 commissioners must vote to approve an action. You can go to the next slide, please. And this slide details the new sections in this article. We clarified that commissioners can participate in meetings virtually. We removed that commissioners can deliberate and approve a matter after a meeting ends, and added that commissioners cannot vote by proxy. We added that the commission can adopt rules to allow for the public to address the commission. And finally, we added how committee meetings are conducted. Any questions about the meetings article?
I had a couple.
Sure.
The first one is we don't define what the difference is between an annual meeting and a regular meeting is. Is that defined someplace else? Why it's called an annual meeting?
I don't think it's defined anywhere else, but again, that's something that we can add some language here. It's just the,
Election of the officers.
sure, yeah, and sometimes we do the update of the agency, sometimes it's a different meeting, but we can just add that at the annual meeting, it's where we elect the officers.
Again,
Sure.
I may be reading it too closely, but just struck me. It hit me as I was reading it. And then what really struck me was the special and emergency meetings and the
Mhm.
notice requirements.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if there should be some language in there that says that we don't just send the email, but we need it to be acknowledged receipt. You know, that we made a special effort to reach out to commissioners in an emergency situation. I mean, what hit me is that we could send out emails, but not everybody would get them in time for an emergency meeting.
Sure.
And that there'd be some sort of, I don't know, affirmative effort to make sure that everybody's aware that we're convening for an emergency meeting. Because I, for one, don't read my email every day or all the time.
Why don't we think about that a little bit
Think
more?
about it.
Because for the emergency meetings, it probably, it would be a true emergency in that situation.
Yep.
So, we would need to think through a little bit more about maybe it could be, a text message or something else, but let me go back and think about
Yeah, I
that a
think
little
I
bit
just
more.
that it hit me for both of those types of meetings that it's important that we all know they're happening
Sure.
and more than just sending an email or a letter. Are we still on Article 4?
Yep.
Mhm.
Let's see. There's a section on public comment that just hit me. Do we have rules already for what the comment those? Again, they're implied by reference that we've set those rules. And
Right. So I wouldn't want to like reference those rules exactly because those might change over time, but
don't think I was arguing for that either.
Okay.
Just curious.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry to everybody, but I thought we were still on. I missed my opportunity on section 3, on Article 3. And there was section 10, I think, is the one that talks about. Anyway, section 10, I found the typo. I showed there. It says. No, I'm on the wrong. Oh, Article 3, sorry.
In section 1. Okay. Is it in the first section, in the first sentence of section 10?
Yes, where it says employee rather may employ.
Okay. I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, shoot, I'm sorry, I'm not following. But it also says that the commissioner can't fill this role.
Mm-hmm.
So why aren't I in the right place here? Fill
You-
the role of a vacancy in the
right.
president CEO's chair.
That actually came up semi-recently at the last HUD audit. They took a look at our bylaws and they thought that that was inappropriate, and they cited a few of the sections of the CFR where they said that that was not allowed.
Huh.
So we did make that change, I believe this year, or if not late last year, to conform with that audit.
Okay, that's interesting to me because I'm aware of many organizations where if there is an emergency vacancy in the CEO position, that a member of the board steps in to fill that role.
That's what our bylaws used to say before we got the HUD audit, and then we made that change. Yep.
All right, never mind. I don't want the job anyways.
Hmm.
And then the emergency suspension of bylaws, which I think I have here in my notes, is section 12.
Mhm.
Implies that we should probably have guidelines in place already that the chair would, deploy if an emergency came up where we were suspending the bylaws.
I mean, we can talk about that also maybe after this. It's, I wouldn't want it to be so rigid that it wouldn't take, like, for instance, nobody saw COVID coming. So those guidelines probably wouldn't apply to something like COVID. So I wouldn't want to have something that wouldn't, would be stale, and you'd want it to be flexible and dynamic depending on what the emergency was.
I totally agree with that. At the same time, it's sort of disaster preparedness
Mhm.
with sort of what kind of maybe even if our standards were if another COVID hit, what are we going to do?
Yeah,
to mobilize quickly.
That might talk a little bit outside of the bylaws themselves. So for instance, what happened with COVID is that there were a couple temporary amendments made to allow for fully remote meetings where our prior bylaws did not allow for that. So I would think that a lot of this would be, being able to work from home or like, maybe suspending some notice requirements instead of having to give 5 days notice. It might be a 2-day notice things like that.
Like could be in those circumstances anyways, that the chair, say, I'm going to move that we, do emergency procedures and ignore the bylaws because, right, in real time.
Yes, right. It would depend on what's happening.
Amended by, this case is.
Mhm.
I'm just, again, that was more not necessarily changing what we have in front of us, but you understand that if we have that in place already.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, good.
Okay. I think we can move to the next article, which is Article 5. This is a new article. It's providing standards of conduct for the commissioners, and it provides that commissioners must adhere to applicable laws, engage with each other and staff respectfully, and conduct themselves appropriately. The article also adds a mechanism to remove commissioners from the commission if they fail to adhere to the standards of conduct. To remove a commissioner, any commissioner can request that the chair convene a meeting to vote on the removal. The affected commissioner must receive notice at least 5 days in advance of the meeting, and the removal must be approved by a supermajority vote, which is the same as what we just discussed for removal of officers. If the commission approves the removal, the chair presents the recommendation to the county executive and the county council, and the removal will not be effective until approved by the county executive. In the event that it's the chair that the commission wishes to remove, the vice chair will complete the steps that I just discussed. Any questions here? All right, next slide, please. These are the last two articles. It's amendments and indemnifications. Article 6 is how to amend the bylaws, and we're not suggesting any changes to this article. Article 7 is a total rewrite and speaks to the agency's duty to indemnify a commissioner in the event they are named in a lawsuit. The agency will indemnify a commissioner against any liability they incur by reason of their position on the commission if the commissioner acted in good faith and in a manner they believe to be in the commission's best interest. If served with a lawsuit, the commissioner must request indemnification by providing the general counsel with written notice within 7 days of being served, and the general counsel will determine whether indemnification is permitted under the bylaws. Commissioners must cooperate in the defense of a claim. If a commissioner does not cooperate or they knowingly misrepresent material facts, the agency can terminate the representation. Next slide. The agency or its insurance provider will select the attorney, and HOC will have full control of the defense. The agency is not obligated to indemnify a commissioner who fails to abide by the bylaws or who is adjudged to be guilty of a criminal offense, liable for fraud, gross negligence, willful misconduct, malice, bad faith, self-dealing, recklessness, or liable to the commission for damages. Are there any questions about this article?
I had a couple.
Sure.
The first of all, how does this reflect? I came into the role assuming that we have directors and officers liability insurance already that indemnifies us against suits. And I'm reading this now to be, this is in the case where an individual commissioner gets sued for their role, and not say if we as a commission are named in a suit against the HOC.
Right. HOC as an entity is named in lawsuits all the time.
Yep.
It would really be if you were named in your capacity as a commissioner. So if they named Paul Weech as a defendant in a claim. And what I'm saying is that, yes, the agency would be indemnifying you and providing you with counsel. The caveat to that is if you did something in bad faith, or you were, grossly negligent, or you, for instance, like if it was a procurement method and you enabled your best friend to get a GC contract, right? In those kind of instances, it would be that self-dealing that you would no longer be eligible for defense from the agency.
Right. So the hypothetical that I was trying to explore in my brain was the nuisance lawsuit, or someone up here says something bad about a development project and we get sued by the developer for that person's comment. So it would be Weech, who made the comment, gets named specifically.
Right.
But acting in my responsibilities as a commissioner and Just saying what I thought was important to the debate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go like in general, yes.
Yeah.
Normal run-of-the-mill comments, sure. But if you went off the handle and said a bunch of things that were inappropriate and willful or malicious, then it would be a question that we would have to look into, right? So it's going to be a case-by-case basis. But I think, the general rule of thumb is as long as you're performing your job and you're working within your scope and you're, doing what you think is in the best interest of the agency, you're probably going to be fine.
Mm-hmm. And it says that the commissioners should be adjudged to be guilty of a criminal offense. Does that mean that we're indemnified until a court of law adjudges us?
That's right.
Right.
Yes, we would defend you up
and then
until you were found guilty.
we as a commission would withdraw our,
And in that case,
with
it would-
indemnification.
Right, and you would likely have to reimburse the agency for its legal costs.
And how does this all track to what we already have covering us in the insurance?
It more or less, so what we're doing is we are actually providing you indemnification in addition to what we have
That's
for
what I was
insurance.
reading. Yeah.
So it's really like you have insurance and everything that's covered in insurance, you will be covered for.
Uh-huh.
In addition to that, if there's something that's outside of insurance but still meets the requirements in the bylaws, we would still provide legal representation unless you met one of the caveats.
Mm-hmm. Which brings me to the final thing, and I have total faith in our general counsel, but was wondering why the decision to apply indemnification in the instances we're talking about wouldn't come back to the commission to approve the indemnification of an individual.
I think that
given
would be
our financial exposure.
I think that'd be a little bit of a conflict of interest for the commission itself to decide whether or not to indemnify a commissioner.
Yeah, and again, I was, well, but it's actually deciding whether the organization should indemnify an individual.
Right, and I think it also ultimately hinges on a legal question and an insurance question. I don't think it would be something that you would let a commission whom the bad actor is a part of be part of a decision about whether or not to indemnify that individual.
Think about that. As I was thinking through it, what my proposal was, that definitely we would want you to review the case and, review our exposure, our contract, contractual obligations, but just wondering whether in the end, the full commission should say, yes, we want to indemnify our fellow commissioning person against this lawsuit. Because it just struck me as it's a potentially major investment of our resources if it's above and beyond our insurance coverage.
Well, what we're saying here is that we are agreeing to cover anything that you do within your job scope. So I would think that that's what we're asking you to agree to today, is that as long as within your job scope, it wouldn't be a decision for the commission. That way the commissioners are provided a level of assurance about what kind of coverage they're going to be getting. And then again, when you're falling outside of it, I don't think it would be a question of whether or not the commission should be choosing to indemnify a bad actor. Again, I think you're getting a little bit into the conflict of interest realm there. So that's why I'm thinking it would not stay within the commission itself to make that decision.
I'd also like to chime in. I think when you make those types of decisions as a commission that's not guided by legal counsel, you create exposure for the commission itself.
Well,
and therefore
it may be
that it's general counsel and or other legal counsel, but clearly making that type of decision without guidance from legal counsel creates exposure for the commission. And then we just have a circular question. And then we have to ask, are we indemnifying the commissioners who made the improper decision related to indemnification? And so I think obviously this is crafted in a way that allows for the commission as a whole to be able to rely upon the expertise, the legal expertise, the ability to evaluate the risk of the commission not indemnifying someone. And as stated, should the scenario turn out that the individual was actually committing some type of crime or was violating our requirements or the law, they are required to pay back the attorney fees. And so there still is a level of assurance there. And so I would just add that additional consideration.
Great, thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions about those two articles, we can go to the last slide, which just really is the conclusion of our presentation. I did ask if there were questions along the way, but I want to open the floor one more time if there's any questions generally.
Absolutely. You have a question? I have one. Will this be our new bylaw book? If this is it hasn't gone to the commission yet, but this will be on our new bylaws book that we go by. Am I correct?
Mhm.
And the things that you put that you got in here with the line cross, that's the things that it's no longer we're going to use, right?
Right. I will say that the red line looks maybe a little more extreme just because a lot of it was cleanup and it was, changing things from passive voice to active voice, things like that. But the presentation outlined the major changes.
Yes.
So the bylaws will be available to the public. Will they be posted to the website or? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I see you got the seal on it. Yeah. Okay, we don't have to vote on this, do we, President Andrews? We do?
Yes, you would be voting to support advancing this to the full commission.
Can I get a vote?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. We want to take this to the commission.
Thank you.
Come see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have one more additional item on our agenda. It's the proposed HCV administrative plan amendment. Preference for transition from another rental assistance program. President Andrews.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. This item comes before you requesting support for an administrative adjustment in our administrative plan. Ultimately, as you will see in this presentation, there are two programs that we would like to recommend receive priority in the voucher program under certain circumstances. You recall we came before this committee in regards to the bridge program, how that has been structured with the support for NYU Furman and others, the direct cash subsidy program, wanting to structure that program in a way that encourages self-sufficiency, that removes the fear of reaching your fullest potential. And one of the ways that we have structured that program to promote that is to request consideration for one, if the program loses funding, to be able to capture that individual in our voucher program, and two, under very certain circumstances, if that individual's financial circumstance changes, being able to welcome them back into the voucher program. You will also hear about new policy regulations that and guidance, that we received from HUD related to the emergency housing voucher program. And so these are administrative plan changes. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues. We have at the table Ken Silverman, Vice President of Government Affairs, as well as Davita Rowley, Vice President of Resident Services, both of whom work very closely on the bridge program. We also have in the room with us the Vice President of Housing Resources Division, Lynn Hayes, if there are questions related to EHV. Thank you.
Thank you, President Andrews, and good evening, Chair Kroom, Commissioner Shaw, Commissioner Leach. President Andrews did a great job summarizing, so I think we can skip the summary here. If you go to the next slide. So again, we're proposing to create a new preference in our administrative plan. This slide shows our current two local preferences. If you look at our administrative plan, which is posted on HOC's website, there in the chapter 4, which describes how we maintain and select from our wait list, there are a number of ways that we provide I would say like sort of lowercase p preferences. So those would include special voucher types, for example, the VASH vouchers, which accept veterans facing homelessness that are referred by the VA, as well as what we call targeted selection, which allows us to maintain our requirement to select at least 75% of new admittance at 30% AMI or below to the voucher program. And then there is the specific category of local preferences. So all of those are really governed by HUD regulation. They're based on the rules that came with those vouchers when we applied for and received them. And then the local preferences is really where we have fairly broad, not unlimited, but pretty broad authority for the commission to determine how they want to prioritize, based on the needs of our local community. So we currently have 2 local preferences. The first, as you see, is for displacement. So families that are impacted by a fire, a flood, natural disaster, redevelopment. Those are require a referral and a certification from the county executive's office, and that those folks receiving that preference is fairly rare. And then we have a preference for residency, so families that live, work, or have an offer to work in Montgomery County. That preference is much more common, and in fact, the vast majority of the individuals selected to receive a voucher, have that preference. And if you don't meet that qualification, you're going to be on the wait list for a long time. You can go to the next slide. So what we are proposing is to create a new second local preference. So it would go below the displacement preference, but above the residency preference, that would allow folks who are required to transition from another HOC administered rental assistance program. And you can see the exact terms of that there, and then the 2 programs that we would propose applying that to at this time, which would be HOC Bridge, and then the emergency housing vouchers. If you can go to the next slide, please. So focusing on the emergency housing vouchers first. And again, Lynn Hayes, our Vice President of Housing Resources, is here if you have any more detailed questions. But to summarize, this is a category of vouchers that was created in 2021 as part of the American Rescue Plan. They are essentially housing choice vouchers, but with a limited at the time of selection to households who were homeless, at risk of homelessness, or attempting to flee domestic violence and those other elements that you see there. So we applied for and received 118 of those emergency housing vouchers when HUD published that funding notice. We quickly leased them up. There is a typo I just want to call. So it was in 2023 that HUD published a notice instructing public housing authorities that they could no longer reissue the emergency housing vouchers. So as folks moved out of the county or circumstances changed, we were no longer able to bring new families into that program. And so we have, through attrition, come down to have 88 active households that are currently on those vouchers now. That 2003 notice indicated that HUD would continue to fund the remaining families on the program through 2029. It was the March 2025 notice issued by the new administration that indicated that funding would end at the end of calendar year 2026. And so that obviously creates a increased urgency to figure out how we can mitigate that. And then about a month ago, on June 20th, HUD published another notice that provided guidance on how they suggest and strongly encourage PHAs to manage those families. And their proposal was for PHAs to create a preference in their administrative plan to be able to bring them into the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And so that's what we're proposing to do here, consistent with that guidance. Let me pause and see if there's any questions about the emergency housing vouchers.
So can the 30 people that lost their emergency housing vouchers we didn't find a housing choice voucher for them. They just left the program and stopped receiving subsidies. Is that
Correct. Yeah, they, through the various ways that people leave, the program, either they moved or
got more income?
passed away or any number of other reasons. And then we were not able to, pull somebody off the wait list to reissue that voucher. So
that absent this preference, it's not like they were able to get into the housing choice vouchers. It's just
correct.
They
They
lost their subsidies.
They could still be receiving that emergency housing voucher if whatever happened that caused them to leave. And they could, the 88 folks that are still receiving it, can continue to receive it through the end of 2026. That also gives us time to enact this preference and then have an orderly transition.
Thanks.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So, focusing on HOC Bridge, and again, we didn't include all the background. We had a great, meeting a couple months ago where we had the opportunity to provide a lot more information about, this proposed local program. And this is sort of one piece that we're, hoping to move forward and get into place as we prepare to, take many other steps to launch it. And so, there's really, the key thing is to have a backstop in place. We're asking people through that program to voluntarily, give up their housing choice voucher and move to this locally funded program. And so, this is a mechanism where we can provide some backstop so that if, for any reason, whether it's funding or the commission decides that the program, hasn't worked as we hope it might, or any other reason, and we want to phase it out, we have the ability to transition folks back into the voucher program. Similarly, this would give us a way for individual households, if they suffer some significant hardship where, they no longer are a good fit for Bridge. And, we would spell that out very specifically in the Bridge program operating procedures, that they could transition back into the voucher program. So it's kind of a nice backstop. I did want to highlight, some of the information we've provided below. This is something we've been working on continuing to develop after, since we had our last meeting. So this is kind of a new element to the proposal. And I really want to say, President Andrews has really been, an incredible leader. This was like the glint of an idea that she has, pushed through, and really made sure that as we're, thinking about how to develop this program, as we're working with NYU and looking at what other PHAs are doing, that we're really focused on what makes sense for us, for our customers, first and foremost. And so, this element is, and I, really want to focus on the extended participation idea, which is new. We did talk last time about the idea of having the earned income disregard, which is something that we, used to be available in the public housing program. The extended participation idea is that for families that move into Bridge, if they go over the income limit and or get to a $0 subsidy, in the voucher program, they would be off the voucher program. And if something happened and their income tanked or they had some major hardship, they would have to apply and be at the back of the wait list. And that really, has a tendency to limit people's thinking. And I think, very rationally, they want to make sure that they have that security. And so, we've all, I think, heard anecdotally stories about folks, not taking that raise, not, looking for that new job because it would push them over that limit. And, and so we're hoping to create a program that provides the support for folks to be able to spread their wings, without, by supporting them and not by, punishing them. And so this extended participation idea is that, they would continue to be participants in the program, even if they're at $0, as long as they continue to annually recertify. We have the added benefit of we get to continue to see, their income and how they're doing over time. And so for the research side of things, we get to track that and have a better sense of outcomes longitudinally. But then, if something does happen, they're able to come back in their program. And again, because, unlike the voucher program, Bridge, is funded, we just have a dollar amount. So having them in that slot doesn't mean that we can't bring someone else into the program, as opposed to the voucher program where, if someone stays on at $100 a month, that, that prevents us from bringing someone off of the wait list. So, just really wanted to emphasize that. Any questions about Bridge and obviously in particular how this relates to the admin plan amendment?
Got any questions? You have any questions?
Yeah. So where are we on the development of Bridge? Does it come back to this committee and then to the full commission for approval of its final design?
No, this is the item that we need approval from the commission in terms of the priority for the actual program. The concept of Bridge was approved in part by the full commission when we came up with our list of proposed ideas to advance our strategic plan. And so the shallow subsidy concept there, of course, having a chance to present it to this committee with the support of NYU, a chance to hear feedback in terms of program design at that time. But as it pertains to commission, and I think the next slide, actually, if we can advance, will give some guidance. At this point, we're really at the phase of, and by the way, the board already approved the funding source at an earlier meeting before your tenure, where we had alternative placements, the first alternative placement of last year, I believe, where the board agreed that we would use the interest from that particular alternative placement and any subsequent alternative placements to fund.
And subsequent ones.
Yep,
okay.
to fund.
I remember when the subsequent one came in. That
yes. And so it's what we have agreed to with the county. We've, of course, I had a chance to share and brief this with the county. I will also just add that yesterday, was it yesterday? We met with the RAB. I don't know. I'm losing track. Monday. Today is Wednesday. Yeah. We met with the RAB as well. So we're really at the stage where we need to.
This is just something we need to do administratively.
Absolutely. We're at the administrative stage. What we will be coming back to after we get the final adoption in September, we'll come to the full commission for that formal adoption. And then we'll be reporting out in terms of how it's coming along, of course, making sure the commission understands where we are with marketing and how the program is developing. It's a very small pilot start. And just to remind you all, literally only 10 families starting off, and then we'll expand over time. So we are definitely being judicious and conservative and making sure that we model this in a way that we're all comfortable with, but we will be presenting and providing updates to the commission along the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chelsea, I wanted to say thank you because a lot of people would be out of a home and you're still trying to do what you said you was going to do, and that's to keep our people, our residents housed. And I want to thank you for that. So
thank you.
Ken, you can finish, but I just wanted to say that. Did you have something to say, Zoe?
I want to echo Madam Chair as well, and just also add that in commending this effort, you also included the community's voice and trying to understand a lot of their issues in designing this. And so I wanted to commend you with that.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, there was definitely focus groups that took place as well. And so that fed into the design. And we're just excited about the overall potential for this being a new innovative approach to helping families and, quite frankly, also helping mobility in the program. What I will just say, and I'm certain when we bring this to the commission and make sure the full commission also understands the program design, it has a dual purpose. It helps that family member and or participant who's on the cusp of reaching that next promotion, but is hesitating to take it because they don't want to lose their subsidy. And it helps them move forward. But then it also helps us take that same voucher and quite frankly, go to the individuals on our waiting list. And commissioners, as you know, the current attrition per month is anywhere between 40 to 70, depending on that month, of individuals that leave the voucher program. That's out of close to 10,000 vouchers, right? And in that number, only 10% of the individuals who are leaving the voucher program because of their income. And that number might even be smaller than that. It's a very small number of individuals who actually find themselves self-sufficiently moving beyond the voucher program. And so our hope is that we're able to create a model that others are interested in potentially adopting, and two, that allows us to begin to see the movement on our waiting list, which has been stagnant for many, many years, primarily because, of course, once people get into the voucher program, there's not a lot of movement or mobility there. And so we're really excited about it. We're grateful for our partners at NYU Furman. And I will share, we're also exploring another component, bringing in an expert who has experience on the mental health side to be able to think through some of those mental barriers that these programs, as designed, and I will just say potentially unintentionally, creating that mental roadblock for people in terms of self-sufficiency, and how programs designed like this could potentially change those outcomes. And so I'll turn it back over to Ken, but we're really excited, as you can tell, about launching and moving forward.
Thank you so much, President Andrews. And yeah, all I wanted to highlight, again, on this slide, we met with the RAB on Monday. We had a really robust conversation about the details of Bridge. It was also our opportunity to sort of share more in depth about that program, as we did with you earlier. They did vote to support this administrative plan amendment, both for Bridge and for the PHVs. So there'll be a formal letter, I guess, to that effect. Wanted to highlight that. If we can go to the next slide. So that concludes our presentation, and the question is whether the commission would like to forward this, support this administrative plan amendment and bring it to the full commission.
Do you have any questions?
No questions. Just a comment. I totally am excited about an endeavor to help people who are at the higher income of our voucher recipients move on, take the step, become self-sufficient, and leave the program to free up the scarce voucher resources for extremely low income people, right? So I'll be very interested as we move along. I know 10 doesn't give us a big sample, but to see if the right of return is ever used, and just sort of to the extent that it's used, because that takes away that one goal of the program, which is to free up the vouchers for very low income.
10 is a start.
Yep.
Yeah. 10 is a
Yeah.
start.
So I'll be interested to see how that plays out as we pilot this.
And that is something that is unique about our design here, as opposed to, there are a number, we shared before, of PHAs that are looking at doing different kinds of this sort of direct rental assistance, but those are all more focused on, sort of bringing people off the wait list into that as a kind of study to compare against the voucher. So I think, we have a really good opportunity, hopefully, to get some good results, and hopefully we get to more than 10. We're able to capture that. And
Right. There's been some modeling that will show how the program can increase even up to 80 participants over the course of time. We, of course, at some point will be having to explore financial resources to continue to support this program. So we want to model it in a right way that can attract either philanthropic and or other funds to support the program. I will just caution that it won't be a scenario where people do not find themselves having to come back. At some point, we should expect that there will be a percentage of individuals who find themselves needing support because
Of course.
if we understand some of the reasons for that, we understand that there's not a great deal of emergency funds and quite frankly, some of the systemic and structural complexities that result in certain incomes having challenges over periods of time. So I would not want us to think that if there is any recidivism in the program, that's a negative thing. But we do want to provide and will be providing upfront wraparound services around financial counseling and home ownership and all of the additional supports to help these families get lockstep and prepared for that next step of independence. But what we don't track and what we don't see are the number of people who do leave the voucher program, but then they're at number 39,000 on the list again, right? And so in this instance, we might see that there are some people who return, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we just need to recognize that there might be some of that, but ultimately it will be the individuals who don't, and then their children's children that don't, and ultimately the hopeful movement around how we're able to see the program from top to bottom benefit. So, yes.
Commissioner Zoll, you have any questions? Okay, so
I move to support forwarding it to the full commission.
full commission.
Second.
It was been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we're gonna take this to the commission.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that everything for today?
Yes.
No, Madam Chair, I would like to also wish you a very happy birthday on Sunday.
Thank you.
And otherwise, I would support a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you,
It's,
commissioners.
It's
And happy
4:55.
birthday in
We're gonna
advance.
end our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Something, thank you.